The idea of church is about reaching out to people in their moment of weakness, at their lowest point in their lives, in their moment of vulnerability. And church is about reaching out to people that are sick physically and bringing the healing of God to them, but it's also about people that are sick spiritually and bringing spiritual healing to them through the word, through counseling, etc. I think sometimes we make the mistake as a church of only showing compassion to people who are in need, either because they have lost somebody, they are going through bereavement, or people that are going through whatever forms of difficulties that we can relate with. But I actually think the Christ model is that the people who need compassion the most are the people who are lost spiritually. I think it's important for us as leaders to remember the people that we lead, where they come from. As South Africans, we have a story, and a lot of people come from difficult backgrounds, not out of their own choice, but because of circumstances. But also the people that we lead in churches have a background and a history and a story, which often leads to quite deep wounds, deep-seated wounds. Some of them psychological, emotional. Of course, those are very well spoken about, the emotional wounds, but also spiritual wounds that sometimes make it difficult for them to respond to the word the way that an average person who doesn't have that history would. And compassion is about also understanding where people come from, what people come with. And so my orientation to leadership is you need to understand and be compassionate about where people come from and what they've experienced in their journey. And therefore, how you extend yourself, how you extend grace and the gift of God needs to come from a perspective and a contextual understanding of what informs their current existence. My experience in the Church of the Holy Ghost, the stories that we have heard from the beginning growing up, is how the founder of this church reached out to people and particularly provided for the material needs of the people. The church is known for giving to people that are in need. It has been known for helping people set up, particularly in the olden days, set up whether it is farming cooperatives in order to make people to be self-sustainable. And one of the things that I've always admired about the church is the giving and the sharing and how people support each other. I personally have experienced compassion in my life. It is common knowledge that I have experienced a number of losses, personal losses, at a very young age and in the early stages of my ministry. And I honestly believe that I could never have done it. I could never have made it. I could never have had the type of resilience and strength that I have if it wasn't for the compassionate support and reaching out of people that truly cared and understood what it means to stand with me in my time of need. I have an example to share. One of the most closest people in my family, a lady who just passed on, Ugogo Umambonambi, who passed on earlier this year. When I was at varsity, she used to give me an allowance of 1,000 rands a month. Now, as a student, 1,000 rands plus other allowances that you receive mean a lot. Even when I started becoming financially independent, she kept on giving. And I got to a point where I said to her, I no longer need the money. I'm okay, I'm stable financially. And her instruction to me was, I'm sure you'll find use for it. And up until the day she passed on in January 2020, she regularly, on a monthly basis, made that allowance of 1,000 rands, which allowed me to also pass it on and show compassion to others who are in need, because it was no longer about what I needed, but it was also about what other people needed. And that was, for me, a great example of what compassion is, that at some point, it's no longer about whether a person needs this or not, but it's enabling a person to also pass it on to others. So the notion of grace is really more than just us being saved and experiencing the benefits of knowing God and receiving from God, but it's also about us becoming conduits of the grace of God onto other people who may not have the type of closeness to God that we have. And that is about paying it forward. And secondly, you give. You give not because you have abundance and plenty, but you give because you have received. And I understand that, and I have understood that in my leadership as a principle of paying it forward and ensuring that you create a chain of blessing for generation after generation. So one of the things that I'm passionate about in the church is ensuring that we are a giving church. I think it is important for the church to remember that one of its core mandates, particularly when it comes to the welfare of society, we have to give. One of the things that I've taught the church over the years is giving. Not only giving to people in the squatter camps or informal settlements, giving temporary things which are important, like soup and breakfast to children that go to school, but also empowering them on a regular basis to become self-sustaining. And I think that is something that we need to become more good at as a church. The second thing that I'm very passionate about is empowering especially young people. And I think it's important for churches to create legacy projects. And the legacy project is one that will outrun you or outlive you. And there is nothing better than education. There is nothing that you can give to any society, to any community, to any family better than education, because it allows people to rise above poverty levels and it enables them to continue that for generations to come. So when our hearts are filled with grace, we are able to harness a heart of kindness, and we are able to demonstrate kindness, love, compassion, mercy towards other people, including forgiveness. And it is then that we would be able to extend any gifts, material gifts, that people may need because they come from the heart. It starts with the heart and it flows onto the hand. And that is how a church can show compassion.